And as Cam said, obviously you can see that Tennie's not on here, and we were asked by Cam if we would be open to share. And if you look at the title of what this is about, it's BADAS, badass, excuse my language, and talking about families in recovery, and I believe there's a couple of different ways we can describe badass when it comes to Tennie. So we're gonna talk about that also. Karen's gonna tell you a little bit about what that is.
I know Mother a few weeks ago, I guess, talked about it. She had a post about it, but it's bowel-associated dermatosis arthritis syndrome. It's an excessive immune response to gut bacteria, and it's directly caused from the bypass surgery that she had back in the 70s, which they no longer do because it is so dangerous. It does have a lot of side effects, and about 20% will develop this syndrome. And she's in the lucky 20% and is having a flare up from that right now.
And most of y'all know how Tennie is, and kind of stubborn a little bit, and I'm ready to go home. Y'all need to let me go home. Just get me up out of this bed and let me go home, and as her children, I'll speak personally, growing up with a mother with an eating disorder, and Tennie has talked about this, and she has always had that inner knowing, from where she came from, and she has always sought answers in her life, and consequently, she has passed this on to us through her life. This past Mother's Day, week and a half ago, I was the only one that was there with her on Mother's Day. And most of y'all know how she gives and gives and gives, to others, to help mothers and daughters, to help families in addiction. And we were with a family for a week who had just recently gone through a trauma. And it was like, when we found out about it, there was no question about it that we were going, and well, Mother didn't feel, wasn't up to her potential, not potential.
She wasn't 100%.
She wasn't 100%, but y'all know how she is. If she can carry the message and pass it on to somebody else, she shows up, she suits up, and she gives out. Not gives out, but she gives too. So on Mother's Day, that's what she did. We went and we sat with these people. We walked them through on Mother's Day. I know I told her that morning, Happy Mother's Day, and it was like, oh yeah, it is Mother's Day, and part of what I want to talk about, not about honoring her, but honoring the work that she's done. And the topic is about families in recovery. Our family is in recovery. We can show up for each other. Yesterday when I was up at the hospital, and it's amazing what you can learn, just from observing people and families. And I was walking out, and there were these 3 women. They were obviously related, and a lot of times when there's a person in the hospital, everybody comes from far and wide, and they sit in the waiting room and they catch up, You know what I mean? They'll, oh, what are you doing now? Oh, did you hear that they got married? Oh, that and da 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 da. They catch up, meaning they don't spend a whole lot of time with each other, except when an event occurs. And what I was thinking about is we don't do that. We don't have to catch up because we spend time together as a family. Years ago, maybe my whole entire childhood, I mean, we couldn't have gone through this in the disease. You know, one of us, usually me, would get mad and run off. You know, we all have our little roles of how we take care of stuff. We couldn't have come together as her adult children and just been there, you know. So I've had some emotions about all of this. And I was listening to a meeting last night, the Shades of Hope alumni meeting, and a man spoke about his family in recovery, you know, and the family is in the disease together and they get sick together. And then he talked about how they're in recovery today. And it dawned on me, you know, I don't share my mother with a lot of people, but I share my mother with a lot of people. And everybody on here knows that, you know. And what I thought about is how she has helped so many people just by telling her story, you know, telling what it was like and what happened. And she has always, always, always sought answers, you know. And a lot of y'all know her story. And my mother is a badass. You know, she is. She stepped out and in 1968 started Al-Anon because she wanted answers. You know, my dad was still drinking. You know, I was 4. Christy was a baby. She wanted answers. You know, she found out about the weight loss surgery and had it in 1972 because she wanted an answer. You know, by the age of 26, she was raising 7 children. I mean, that's kind of a badass, you know. Had a drunk husband and she was 287 pounds. And then I thought about my mother, despite what was going on in the family, she was always there. You know, she was always there. She went to everything we did. You know, she was present physically, you know, and probably had a lot of stuff going on in her head, but she was there. And she gave up a lot for us, you know. I remember she would take on jobs. She ironed. She did hair back when you could do hair. You know, hair, big hair.
She still does her hair.
Bouffant hair, yeah. And just to make a little extra money for us. You know, I remember one year she wanted to get Christy this baby bed for her dolls. And she worked and worked and worked and ironed and had a lady make these beautiful sheets for her, you know, because she wanted us to be happy. I remember, you know, she would give up buying herself anything, you know, at her weight, 287 pounds back then, they didn't have a whole lot of clothes for women her size, you know, and she would wear the same thing. She had 4 or 5 outfits, you know, and some of that might have been codependent because we did make her look good, but she was there, you know, and she always sought answers. And as a child, watching that, you know, she was a powerful woman. I mean, watching her look for answers. And I learned, you know, by watching her that this thing works, whatever. Your turn.
Well, I was resistant. I remember when Mother got into Al-Anon, and I felt she abandoned us to be in Al-Anon. I felt, because like Kim said, she did everything for us. She was always there. When she got involved in Al-Anon, it's like she started for the first time to take care of herself. And so I was resistant to a 12-step program for years. And what I wanted to do is do it my way. I thought I had all the answers. And so I took the geographic cure way. I would just withdraw and move as far away as I could. And then I was going to stop the cycle of addiction with my family, my immediate family, because I didn't want to be around them. I thought they were crazy and I could figure it out on my own, but it didn't work. It didn't work. I ran my life into the ground. But what I did start to see is changes in my mother, and changes in Kim, and changes in the way that we related to each other. And what I noticed is we stopped doing the things like triangulation. We used to, like, just two of us talk about the other one, or we would get with Mother and talk. I would get with Mother and complain about my sisters, and it was just constant. And I know during those days, I couldn't be around my family more than 24 hours before. I mean, I would just set about 24 hours, and I had to go back to my little geographic cure, back to my current family and immediate family. And what's had to happen is each one of us have had to have our own path, and had to, each one of us, get help and get into recovery. I ended up passing on some of my carried shame and my mental illness of depression onto both my kids. Both of my kids have struggled, but my daughter's now in recovery, and our relationship is repaired. And I hate to say it, but we're like best friends. I know I'm always will be her mother, but now we're more like best friends. My son's still out there, but he knows where the answers are. When time is tough, he knows who to call, and he calls his Minnie or his Aunt Kim, because he knows where the answers are. And someday I believe he'll be in recovery, because we've modeled that. We started being honest with each other. We keep our word. We say we're going to do something, and that's been hard, because I know myself, I've let my family down. I've said one thing and done another, but we've kept our word with each other. We don't bring up the past. We have put the past behind us, and we don't get into those shouting fights that we used to get into, bringing up the past. Well, remember when you did this 3 years ago, or whatever. And like Kim said, we spend time together. We make time for each other. And I think that's largely due to our badass mother, who sought those answers and continued. She didn't, in the beginning, she rammed it down her throat. She would put big books everywhere and meditation books everywhere.
Big books by the toilet.
By the toilet. But she went, the more recovery she got into, the more she was able to let us go and let us watch her in recovery and see that it works. And now that we're all in our own recovery, we're able to come together as healthy adults.
And is it perfect? No. You know, we're human beings. Do we get our feelings hurt? Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes we get our feelings hurt. But we stay. You know, we stay, we talk about it, we sit, we listen to each other, and we confront, you know, we problem solve. And then a lot of times in the end, Cam will say, okay, team. Y'all heard her say that. Okay, team, now we have a game plan. Now let's move forward. You know, and we're breaking the cycle. the cycle is breaking.
Can I
There you go.
interject? Everybody that knows us know that Christy and I have Spencer. And I married into this and I didn't know what addiction was. But through the role modeling of Tennie and what I've learned from her, God, I know Spence is still out there and could go either way and in a heartbeat like any young person can. But Christy and I think Kim and Karen will agree, perhaps we have been able to break this cycle. And it goes back to, 30-something years ago, Tennie making that choice, as she says, as simple, but yet as hard as it is, to surrender to the life of recovery. And all I know is I have one of the greatest blessings because of it. And he's 20 years old, 6'2", Bobby O'Hare blowing in the wind. And he is absolutely the joy of my life. And I know Tennie and her commitment, that's not all of it, but I know some of the principles that we have raised that child with have had a great impact. And that does come from raise them in the concept of the 12 steps of honesty, integrity, take responsibility, make your amends. And when you can't figure something out, go ask somebody that's gone before you and do it. So that's my 2 cents. Back to y'all.
You know, I was thinking about, and I've heard in the rooms that you know, we might be the only recovery that anybody ever sees, you know, and it talks about we have to display it in all areas of our lives because people are watching us. Kids are watching us, you know, kids are watching us. I remember when my mother came back from treatment, and that was before I had any recovery, and I was watching her, and I was like, I dare you to mess up, you know, I dare you, because then it doesn't work, you know. And she busted her butt, you know. She did what was in front of her. She followed the program. She worked and she worked and she worked, and people saw it. I mean, she displayed the change. And, you know, part of me wanting to talk today, and she would just, you know, probably cringe, is honoring her, you know, honoring. And I think back, you know, what a badass woman she is. She was one of the first women in this area to get licensed, a woman. And that was years ago when women didn't do that. And then I thought about it. She was the first woman probably in this area in more states to open a treatment center. You know, I thought, wow, you know, and I know that on Mother's Day that I wished her a happy Mother's Day. I know I did in the midst of all of that. And I do my best to honor her every day, you know, and I encourage everybody else, no matter who it is in your life, you know, honor them. And it's as small as, hey, how you doing today? You know, what's going on? It's like, man, you're doing a good job. People like to hear that. Y'all know that, right? Man, you're doing a good job. Man, that smile on your face looks good. You know, and do it now. You know, a few of y'all on this call have young kids. You know, tell them how much you love them. Tell them how proud you are of them, even if they make a mistake. You know, even if they make a mistake, kids make mistakes. You know, anyway, go sister. Is there anybody on the call? Yeah.
We're opening it up. Comments?
Anybody that wants to share?
You know, the last thing I will say, Kim, you talk about watching, and we laugh about this, but when I came into this family, I could never understand why we could not have a family event on Tuesday night because it was RL's meeting. Well, why the hell can't you miss that meeting? I have come to love and appreciate through his commitment to his recovery along with your mother, that's the commitment you have to make. Your sobriety has to be first so you can be available for others. TJ. Can't hear
Okay.
you, girlfriend. There you go.
Okay. My family has always been what we thought was a good church family. And we had family disease together, and we each had our own flavor of the disease and did not realize it until Shades. And I say this over and over, but until Tennie dissected it and showed us that it's all part of one ugly monster, only then could we start to address it. And we do have a family in recovery. And that never would have happened. I'm sorry. There's a lot of things that come from counselors and from churches and from online and from, self-improvement books and advice from friends. And none of that touches the nerve that says, you have a disease, you have a disease, you have a disease. You need to each address your own disease and then respect and honor that among yourselves. And then you can start to get better together. And that's what Shades has done for our family. And I am so moved to tears every day. And you've heard me say this every day. I say, I am so glad we don't have to live like that anymore.
Yes.
And it's kudos to you guys and to God for bringing you into my life. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
Thank you, TJ.
And there's probably some people on this call that have family members that have chosen not to recover, and do it anyway, do your recovery anyway. There are parents on this call. I mean, it's like a ripple effect, but then some don't want it, some don't want it, but we have to live it. I have to live it. I have to say what I mean and mean what I say. And that's following through with my actions. That's doing my own work. I can't do I probably could do Karen's work for her, but I don't do that today. I don't do that. I have to do my own work. I have to do my own inner work, which brings us all back together. I had my mother back. I had my mother back. I remember watching her, and there was one time that she had threatened to kill herself, and she left the house. And I sat up in my room, and I thought, God, I know this isn't her. I know it's not her. And I'd say, just bring her back safe. Just bring her back safe. And I would always think my mother's in there somewhere. My mother's in there somewhere. And because of who she is and what she has done and that inner knowing, and she's talked about this at age 8, she knew that inner knowing. And we have to follow that. We have to follow that, or we don't get recovered, or we, yeah. And I keep saying that she was the seeker of answers. You know, the seeker of answers.
Yeah. Mother's taught me so many things through recovery, but one of the things that I use, tools that I use every single day, and it's one of the AA slogans, is let go and let God. But she says to visualize God sitting in a big comfy chair, because he's got lots of room to take in what we're going to give him. And every day I put each family member in his care and turn that over. And that has really, that, not just that, but all the lessons she's taught me, but that's been one of the main lessons, is to give over our family members to God. And that frees us up to be ourselves, because we're not trying to control everything. And that's one of the lessons I appreciate. Sally, do you have something?
Yeah, and talking about family, of course, for me, growing up in a dysfunctional family, not really having my dad real present in the picture, but my mom was. I look back today when I listen to people's stories about family and how they're in recovery, and and how they work together as a unit to solve problems and things. And I wish that when my mother was alive, that I could have had that kind of relationship with my mom, and we could have talked about a lot of things, and I wouldn't have had so much anger. And same with my brother, just having just sheer anger, mad, angry, but yet yearning to have a relationship with my brother. And it wasn't really until coming to Shades and having to work through issues and doing shame and anger work. And I know last time I came and did shame and anger work on my brother, and I know my brother isn't willing to do a family week type thing yet, but I think down the road he might. But him having his own problems and finally going to rehab, take caring of that. But it really dawned on me yesterday. And we had somebody cut in. I'm sorry. Do you hear me?
No, you're fine. You're fine. Someone else turned their mic off. You're good.
Okay. My brother has been so sympathetic with my latest unexpected surgery last week, and my recovery from healing from that right now. But we had a cousin of ours in Mississippi who was found dead in her bed, and my brother had to go to Mississippi to take care of do some things around her house and get started illegal stuff, this, that, and the other. And he had gotten home and he called me yesterday, and I finally shut up. I know I talk too much, as Kim and Karen will say. Thank you. But I listened, and he told me, he was telling me what all he had done and what he had taken care of, what he felt that his role with my role is with my with the cousin. And I realized yesterday when I hung up the phone, I said, we are finally beginning to work as a unit as brother and sister. Because he didn't have to take the time to call and tell me what all he did and right. Share with me. And so I feel that through trials and tribulations, we're beginning to have a relationship. And so family is really very important. And with his recovery, my recovery, we may not share, he may not want to share about his recovery and so forth, but I know he's working a program. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you. Jackie?
Hi, guys. For some of you that were on the call last night, you got to hear a little bit of our family's recovery, and it has truly been a blessing to emphasize when the sickest gets healthy or, seeks help, how it can impact and the ripple effects of how that one person can impact the entire family. Because I know for a fact that Carly seeking help, and I think Mike shared this last night, which we thought was one of the worst days of our lives, having to go to stage and go to cross the country and do all that, ended up being the biggest blessing in our lives. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what's in store for us, because we just have to be open to what God has in store for us. And when we took that leap of faith and trusted the process and trusted that it was something bigger than what Mike and I could take care of, it allowed us to let go and let God. And I think Mike shared it last night when he said he finally said, okay, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it on my own. I want to, but I can't. And bought into the process. And when we did that, we jumped in full-heartedly, and we still do it to this day. We don't give up. We attend our meetings, we do the work, we call our sponsor, we work our steps, we work with our sponsees, we communicate, we do the healthy confrontation Shade taught us. But as a family unit, we've never been closer. And to say how recovery has changed us as a family unit could be an understatement. I mean, we're not recognizable to some. And I think when I see the growth we've done in ourselves and working on ourselves, and me staying in my hula, just what the benefits have been, I mean, it's just been miraculous, and I'm just so grateful. So to anyone who's ever contemplated, should they go to Shades? Are they willing to go to Shades? Is it worth it? 100% let go and let God, and just see what miracles can happen, because I truly believe I'm a benefactor of that
Yeah,
gift. And so
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Taylor?
You want to go first? Oh, hi. Yeah.
Hi.
Katie. I'm grateful to be on here. There's so many good things. I came to Shades in 2010. I'd been sober for about a year and really was struggling with my eating disorder, and was very confused by it, because in my mind, I had put it in the safe place that it needed to be. And definitely wasn't in any recovery for it, but I wasn't dying from starvation anymore. So I was like, I'm good. And then when I got sober, I was not good and very confused and couldn't figure out where it came from. And I came out to Shades to do an intensive, and it changed my life. It was the first time I'd ever gone anywhere where people said, well, yeah, you got more than one of these, and you got to go about them the same way. Within 2 days, I wanted to run like hell, because there was like 30 things that I was going to need to cop to by the time that the conversations were done. But I was given information, just what Kim is talking about, that Tennie is such a seeker. And even though I hated what I was hearing, I knew I hated it enough that it was absolutely right. I had never had anybody, I had never interacted with anybody like I had Tennie. And I say I was tricked into going and told that I got to do yoga when I got there. And, I got to go the first day and do it. And then quickly, Tennie looked at my exercise history and said, no, you're not going to be doing yoga. And I just lost my mind and just, well, I was told, and blah, 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 and just on and on and on. And she didn't even blink. And she just said, people who don't have problems with exercise typically don't react like this. And she just walked off. And I just stood there like, what? Isn't she going to get upset? What? And just dropped the mic, turned around, walked off. And I had to think about it all day. And it changed everything for me. It made me be able to know some truths that I wasn't willing to even hold up a space for before. And the beauty of all of this is then 2 years later, or a year later, I got to share it with my beautiful friend, Jennifer Newcomer, who then shared it with Jackie. And then fast forward 6, 7 years, I get to tell my beautiful friend Taylor about it. I get to share it with my beautiful friend George. And here we are in Kentucky, building this little tiny village that I never could have dreamt of in my whole life, to not only have recovery, but to have people that just want to be around and get the information that I have learned, and seeing it happen for other people. That's the stuff that makes me keep going and wanting to seek more. I used to feel like, well, there's no way I can help other women with eating disorders. I don't have anything to offer. And now I figured out I just have to tell them what I did. And it's nothing special. They usually are like excited and like, so what do? You seem like you're in recovery. Okay, good. What do you do? And I'm like, I follow my meal plan and I tell people the truth, and then that's all. And they're just like, oh, okay, well, I'll see you later, and I'm good with it. I need simplicity. And so I'm just so incredibly grateful for obviously your mother and everything she's done there, and that I get to share this beautiful stuff with people in my life, and I see them changing in ways that like you can't dream for people, and I've seen that look on people's faces in my life where they couldn't have dreamt. They just wanted me to not die and stop blowing up my life every waking moment. And today it's just very different, and it's all because of your mom and you all and everything that you do. So I'm just really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to jump in real fast. I love, one of my favorite things about recovery is watching it trickle down to my son. And he I got a call from his teacher last week, and it's just like, oh boy, okay. And she was talking about some other stuff, but she was like, so will you talk to him about this? I can tell he really listens to you. And I said, what do you mean? And she goes, well, the other day his friend was getting really frustrated with something, and I heard him say, it's okay, I'm perfectly imperfect, and so are you. And she's like, I know those were your words. And I wanted to be like, those are not my words. Those are Tennie McCarty's words. But he's heard them from me, and just the gifts of, that like we have a relationship now where we can talk about anything. Like sometimes I wish he didn't tell me as much or ask as many questions as he does. But it's just and that's been, I don't know, wonderful. And he loves going to AA meetings. Like he really thinks my AA friends are his best friends. It's so, I don't know, it's so great. And, I do it imperfectly, but it's just better than I could have imagined, seeing it work in his life too, as an 8-year-old. So that's it.
Thank you.
That's cool, Taylor. Gina.
Hey y'all. I'm
Hey,
Gina.
girlfriend.
Hey, good to hear y'all's man, it's good to hear all of this. My sister and I both went through Shades of Hope. I went twice, and then for an intensive, and then my sister also went for an inpatient. And our mother came for 3 family weeks, and she is still very much in her mental illness and her codependency. She reminds me of a dry drunk, although there's nothing in particular that we see that she's particularly addicted to, except the codependency and some of that narcissistic behavior and mental illness. But it's like can you just pick up a drink already so that you can have a reason to have to get into recovery somehow, because she just doesn't see, she'll start something and then say it's not working. And it's very hard. I could relate a lot to what Karen said about having my, 24 hours and then running, and we have to set really big boundaries. And I knew from a very early age, I just connected. I didn't ever connect, actually. I never connected to the idea of motherhood especially like it started as early as adolescence, because I was like, I am not going to have a child because one, I'm scared that I'll be just like my mom. And two, I don't know what kind of environment a child will be raised in. And so I made it all the way to a hysterectomy, to the point where I didn't have children. And I look back at that and I realized that I somewhat robbed myself of motherhood because of the fear of what addiction would do and not being able to break that cycle. But today I realized that it's so important for me to continue doing the work, because I have nieces, and I have, like, there's other people looking at me for, I'm hopefully getting back into the field of counseling. And, there's other reasons besides for me to do it just for a child of my own, to continue doing the work. But I'm telling you, it's hard to set boundaries with a mother that's so sick when you are doing your own work. And it's sad to almost leave them behind.
Yeah.
It's like I want to pull her up with me, but she's just not willing. And my sister and I have both tried to get her to go to shades and intensives and all of that. And it's a very sad situation, but it gives me so much hope to hear how other people just kept doing their own work. And I know that if I continue to do my own work, it's going to be easier to deal with her not doing her own work. So I really appreciated this talk, and I love y'all so much. Thank y'all for helping me change my life and getting started on the right path. That's all I've got.
Tina.
Thanks, Tina.
Mr. George.
Hello, everybody. My name is
Morning.
George Armstrong, and I've got a bunch of stuff. And that's why I came to Shades. Thank you so much for this talk today and sharing. First, it makes me think of my family, and I have the family that didn't have recovery in it and never got recovery in it. Two of my two older brothers have died of this disease. My family was splintered. I was the first one to walk into recovery. And no one else is, they're really, with the exception of my cousin, who's actually closer as a sister to me than anything else. She's been the only one that's really walked in. But that doesn't change the fact that I can just continue to walk. I can just do, what I can do today and be there, answer my phone if anyone reaches out. But I've seen the destruction of all of this stuff in the family. Now, what I didn't understand until I met you guys with Shades, I didn't understand, I always thought about it as drugs and alcohol, but I didn't think about how impactful, eating disorders have been on my family. I didn't realize how sex and love addiction had just racked my dad. I mean, just absolutely racked my dad. And so being able to kind of be aware of that and understand that has been so great, so helpful for me. But the main reason why I wanted to share is just to say how important Shades is to me, and how important, people have heard me talk about, but my great grand sponsor is Burns, and Burns is loves Tennie, just absolutely loves Tennie, and Tennie loves him. And I remember the first time that I heard Burns talk, it blew me away because everyone in the room, I was at a men's meeting, and everyone in the room sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher. I couldn't hear a thing. And what I heard was, I heard Burns talk, and I could hear his voice, and I could hear him speak to me. And I've had that a few times, but most notably when I logged on to my very first Tennie Talks, after, my friend Katie and my friend Taylor had mentioned, I knew that they'd went down there. And so they turned me on to this. And the first thing I noticed about Tennie is I heard her just like I heard Burns. I mean, just exactly like I heard Burns. And it just made my heart just open to her. And I knew that first time that I was going to, at some point, some way, shape, and form, make it to Shades. And I love that Tennie has given that to all of us. And I'm so grateful for the impact that she's had in such dear people's lives, in my life, but also in mine. And the other part of that, and that I think is really important that I want to share is I noticed I can hear Kim too. And that was something that just really blew me away when I'm sitting there in the intensive and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can hear her voice just like Tennie's and just like Ern's. And I really, really appreciate that. And I'm so grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you, George. Chris, how's Utah?
I don't know. I stay out of there as much as possible. I'm in Idaho, and we
I
are
was
growing.
close. I knew the Northwest.
Everybody wants to move to Texas and Idaho because there's freedom and liberty here, and I'm not going to get into all that, but we're growing. We are growing, and that's not all bad. So, talk today. Living in recovery with family is joyful. It's peaceful. It's all the things that you've mentioned about all us getting our own recovery. And my wife, my sister, and myself have all been to Shades of Hope, and all stayed for more than the intensive. And it's certainly been a long journey, but it's certainly been a rewarding journey. You know, about a month and a half ago, I called up. I've offered a lot of amends. I've been home just about a year. I've offered a lot of amends. You know, I believe in being honest always, and I've held myself to such a strict, high standard of honesty that I blinded myself to ways in which I wasn't honest with myself, ways in which I hurt other people and didn't recognize it, justified it. You know, the denial or justification, and in recovery I can see those. And so offering those amends has opened a lot of doors in our family's recovery. So about a month ago, I called my oldest daughter, who I've had a lot of conflict with, and offered some amends for some specific things about raising her, and told her that, and asked her to forgive me, and told her that I know that takes time. I don't expect you to just say I forgive you, but know that that if I could take that back, if I could even take the pain of my actions and my words, I would gladly take that, and so that you wouldn't have to bear it. And last Friday she called me and said, "Dad, I forgive you."
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt. I remember those things, but it doesn't hurt anymore.
Yeah.
And yesterday she showed up at work. I play volleyball with a group here at work, you know, once or twice a week at lunchtime. And she came over, played volleyball with us, and brought me lunch and gave me a big hug. And my wife just a couple of weeks ago came, and there's, you know, in any relationship, there's always discussion and resetting and trying to figure out where everybody's at. And I'm a recovering codependent, pornography, sex addict, workaholic. That's kind of a summary. She's recovering food addict, codependent. And she came, and I've questioned myself a lot about, am I being too demanding? Am I expecting too much? I thought we agreed on this. Well, for those of us who have experienced codependence, agreeing to something doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to do it.
Right.
And that's been a big struggle. And she came and said, she basically did the same thing with me that came level and fully honest about these are the places where I haven't fulfilled my agreements, and just the last, and I don't know, all of a sudden everything was clear in my head. All of the questioning and all of the internal turmoil and all of the things that I have put on myself because I thought that her behavior was based on whether I did or didn't do my part. All of a sudden was very clear. And rather than be angry, this is a great feeling of peace and love. And she spent several days just, you know, that, you know, when you realize what you are, and the feeling that you have when you realize what you are, and that it's a lot different than what you wanted to be, that emotional turmoil. She spent several days in that, and I didn't. It was so peaceful to just be there while she went through that, because I knew what she was going through. And her effort and her, I mean, it's almost like you go through the purging process and then you're different.
Yeah.
She went through that purging process for a couple of days. We had a follow-up talk. Her sponsor was great. And all of a sudden we have this new baseline of honesty and integrity in our family. And just in recovery, what I'm really getting at is miracles happen. Like the big book says, many of us had religious convictions galore, but couldn't live up to them. What I see is honesty, integrity, repentance in a Christian religious background. Honesty, integrity, repentance, redemption, all those things that we believe in actually do work when we can get the garbage out. And the 12 steps give us just a nice little pathway for applying that stuff. It actually does work. I feel joy. I feel peace. And please don't let me give you the impression that everything's perfect. It's not. We have our disagreements. We have our angries. But it's so much easier to go, I'm feeling angry. Let's come back to this. When even a year ago, 2 years ago, it was an all out, we're going to solve this right now. And actually everybody's just going to be mad and be hurt. And I've talked a lot, but thanks so much. Recovery, family recovery is beautiful. And when one person persists, other people come along. George, I heard you say that your family hasn't come along. And what I saw, my wife went to Shades of Hope 8 years ago, and she has persisted. Me and my sister are coming along. Her mom is coming along. My mom is starting to come along. Our children are coming along, and things are happening. And that's all. Thank you.
That's amazing.
Thank you, Chris. I need to say one thing, and I don't know if she's watching or not. I want to let you know about Christy, my younger sister. The other night, Karen and Christy and I were up at the hospital, and which is a miracle, you know. And in the past, we would all have our roles, you know. Christy would take charge, and Karen knew all the hospital lingo, and I was just whatever. I don't even know what I was. And we were up at the hospital, and I can hear Tennie in my head that we can work the steps in anything. You know, I'm powerless over my mother being up there. I'm powerless. But there's a power greater than me, you know, and my action is to sit there in the room with my sisters, you know, to sit there, to be there, to scratch my mother's head. I don't know, she's itching, and we take turns scratching her head and her ears, and I'm like, who's gonna scratch now? Rubbing her feet, touching her. You know, the three of us were there. And so I want to, and I doubt if she's on it, but I want to thank her publicly You know, she was up there last night. She got tired. You know, Karen and I were there, and she said, "Are you sure you got her?" And I said, "We got her." You know, and we're up there because we want to be up there, not because we feel like we have to. You know, we want to be up there. Christy's up there right now, and we keep getting updates. So I want to thank her, you know, and there's times when she's the strong one, and then we kind of take turns being the strong one. You know, we can be strong while we're in the room with mother, and then all of us walk out and completely fall apart. You know, and we don't have to use over it. We don't have to run away, and we don't have to do all those little things that we did. We can just be there because we love each other, you know, and I believe recovery is about action, you know, and I've always talked about amends or about mending our behavior. You know, I've hurt everybody in my family, but my behavior is different. You know, in the past, I wouldn't show up. You know, I would let Christy take care of it. You know, I show up, you know. So I don't thank her enough. I don't thank her enough. And so thank you. Anything else?
I just want to say that if you're still struggling in your family, to not give up. Don't give up. I used to think it was hopeless. And there were times I felt like I didn't have a family because I had pulled away. And don't give up. Just continue to work your recovery. And like others have said, God will work miracles.
Right.
And all I want to add is don't give up on those family members that don't know anything about addiction. Like I said, I came into this family 25 years ago. I knew the term, but I knew nothing about it. And I'm going to tell you, they will never in their hearts truly understand it unless they have some issues and they have to work through. But they can learn to respect and see the changes in you and support you in your recovery. Many of you, I've talked to your family members that first called here.
Yeah.
And I believe that's why God has me here. But family is not just blood family. It is family of choice. And I'm blessed to have a family of choice here. And they have reluctantly at times taken me in. But it works if you keep working it. And I would support any of you. Keep people in your prayers. I will ask you to keep Tennie in your prayers as she goes through some of the procedures today. They just took her back for. And keep Shades in your prayers. This is when it is difficult to have a family business, and as close as we are in doing the hands-on work, and then have our matriarch in a little bit of a challenge. So, and keep each other in prayer, because it is through family that we survive.
I want to say one more thing that I got from, I just got a text from somebody that's on the call, and it says, you can pretend to care, but you cannot pretend to show up. That's pretty powerful. So. That's all
And
we
again,
got.
for those of you that signed in late, I've got several. We had to admit Tennie in the hospital Thursday evening. She's still there. She's undergoing. We think we're making progress in trying to find out what's going on with her. Some of it is complications from her badass disease, as Karen explained early on. And we hopefully, by the grace of God, will have her home by the weekend. That's kind of my goal. And we're just taking every day at a time. Please keep her in your prayers. Yeah, we appreciate it. God bless y'all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.